Okay. Oh, hey.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's great. It's
Okay.
Friday.
So welcome, friends, to our first Friday Live with Gladiator Consulting. My name is Rachel D'Souza. I use she, her pronouns. I am the founder of Gladiator Consulting, and with me today is my friend, collaborator, preferred travel roommate, taco date, and sister gladiator, Amy Bossi. Do you want to tell the folks anything about you?
Sure. Your name is so fancy on the screen. I just put Amy.
Amy.
And
That's like, it's like Kesha.
Right.
It's okay. It's fine. Lizzo, whatever.
And I understand that it looks like Annie, and it's not. It's Amy, A-M-I-E. And I also use she, her pronouns. And gosh, I've been doing this work with you for 10 years.
Yeah.
And just found a kindred spirit in the sense that you were approaching the work in the way that I felt it needed to be done in my very soul. And we've just been doing it that way ever since. And turns out there's a whole movement behind it.
Yeah.
And also it works. It's doable. You can be successful. And I love it. It's definitely my job. And I feel sad that some folks don't enjoy their job because I love my job.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's talk about it then. So yeah, this is our first Friday Live episode. We are going to be coming at you every Friday at 2:30 Central Time. And sometimes you'll get me, and sometimes you'll get some of our other Gladiator team having conversations. So why are we doing this? Well, over the course of, I think, the last 10 years, it has been sort of my dream, the goal of the Gladiator team to create a space to talk about the paid work we do, the volunteer work we do in civil society, in nonprofits, with philanthropy, and more recently have found, in these times, in these unprecedented times, as we keep saying over and over, I don't know when they stop being unprecedented, that people need community. And there are a lot of things that can get in the way of that. I have said forever, and Amy and I have talked about this, like, now is not a moment for us to be like hustling clients or capitalizing on the pain that's happening across our sector. But we also wanted to offer a space to talk, to be in community, to learn from each other, and to build something we haven't tried before. So what Amy and I and other people on our team realized is that, generally speaking, our like best work, our best outcomes, the most fun that we have tends to happen while we are gathered and enjoying a beverage. And honestly, today the beverage is water. Like,
Same.
I am in this like, oh, the sun is out and I like to walk and like need to remember to hydrate myself. So today the afternoon beverage is water. We invite you to come to this space with whatever beverage speaks to you on Friday afternoon. And we're going to talk a lot. We're going to talk about what has happened during the week, maybe what's happening for us next week, and talking about small wins and justice. I think the other thing that, I'll share is that in this space, we're all learning. So we bring our whole selves to this work. And that means that we might have some spicy truths. That means we might make mistakes. There might be things that we learn. And like, that's just who we are, like people that show up as vulnerably as we can and are hopeful to respond to this moment in our sector in a way that feels, like a hug. That's it.
Ooh.
Definitely, we want it like maybe sometimes a spicy hug, maybe like a big sister I told you hug, sometimes a like I'm weeping into your chest hug, whatever. But hopefully you feel like some modicum of like regulation, safety, and joy when you leave this space. Or you might really be fired up and ready to like burn it down. I don't know. So,
or maybe a combination of all of the above. And that's fine too.
Okay, great. All are welcome. All are welcome. Yeah. Okay. So Amy, like, where do we want to go with this today?
I think we should start with our origin story and why you founded Gladiator.
Oh gosh. Okay. So let me take you back to the summer of 2015. So yes, we will be celebrating our 10th birthday this summer. So just tag that. There'll be something really fun on that Friday. But I was at home with my 4-year-old and my newborn, and was on maternity leave and had, all the plans to go back to work when maternity leave was over. And that summer, a lot of things in my life changed. The leadership of the organization I had worked at changed pretty suddenly. My partner took a role with his employer that had him traveling all over the place. And so I found myself sort of at home alone in the middle of like a hot, humid St. Louis summer with 2 little kids. And I love them. As you know, you'll hear about them a lot. And, felt like there were other things that I wanted to be doing. It was hard for me, I think, at that time to be home, honestly. And so later that summer, I was telling my brother, Matt, my story, and he's like, you should start a business. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And he was like, oh no, you can like totally go for it. And here's how we're going to do it. And we like literally sat on the couch and, I'm like filling out this form online, and he's like, it needs a name. And he's like, how about RDS Consulting? I'm like, that's stupid. I don't. And then he was like, he literally is like looking out the window. He's like, what about Oak Tree? What about, I mean, no. And then as, luck and fate would have it, I happened to be watching Scandal by the like most revered Shonda Rhimes. And I was like, oh, Gladiator Consulting. And he was like, absolutely nobody is going to take you serious if you name your business Gladiator Consulting. And I was like, you know what? Great. Because this work should be fun and it should be transformative and we should enjoy it. And if people want to judge me or my business by its name or its origin story, then like maybe they're actually not a client. I'm happy to say, that over and over for the last 10 years, we've had literally hundreds of organizations sort of pick us and get a chuckle out of the fact that yes, this business is named after a line from Olivia Pope, the main character in the TV show Scandal by Shonda Rhimes.
Well, a lot of things about Gladiator are apropos. I mean, we're fierce, but we encourage vulnerability. Mm-hmm. All of those things are true.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So I think it fits. I think it works for us. And truly, Amy, to the point of vulnerability, I think our vulnerability is our strength. And it is part of what we try to bring to this work, to our leadership, and to the relationships that we hold.
Well said. Can I ask what specifically grounds Gladiator in that vulnerability?
I mean, you can ask it. Yeah, I think that over the course of my time in the nonprofit sector, which is a lot longer than 10 years, I sort of often find folks that are, really wanting to do a good job and really wanting to follow the rules. And sometimes that means that we contort ourselves into fitting the definitions of what we believe the work should look like, or who we should be in relationship with, or how do we need to show up for, to get funding, to get that grant. And I'm not sure that sort of tradition or those sets of behaviors have served us in this sector. So one of the, components of vulnerability is telling the truth. And not just, the truth of what our organization might need in terms of funding, not just our truth in terms of like, what do you need to be good at your job? What kind of professional development? But also what's true about the systems we're in and the organizations we're in collaboration with. And so, we really strive in all aspects of our relationship, both with each other, like internally, and then with the organizations and individuals we work with, to sort of ground ourselves in the reality that like relationships move at the speed of trust, and trust, mutual, legitimate trust, requires vulnerability.
Can you say more about that, especially the relationship side of things? I think, let me rephrase. When development folks, fundraising folks talk about the work, we always say relationships, relationships, relationships. And I think sometimes those can be very fake and almost are what I know for me, it's kind of what scared me away from this work to begin with. You think of salesmen or, promoting something that you don't really believe in, or being someone you're not.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think it's complicated for everybody. Everybody brings like different experiences. But I do think fundraising can be a really challenging and a really rewarding career to have for people, because you do have the opportunity potentially to do work to advance a cause or an effort that you really like is values aligned to who you are. And that doesn't mean that everybody in your space is going to feel the same way or have the same experiences or value the same things. And I do think that like, it's not just important to be like to practice. I'll use the word practice vulnerability because it is a practice. You don't get good at something without practicing it, right? I think that we have to also be willing to practice vulnerability with people we might not agree with, who might have a different opinion, who might have a different way of doing things. And that can be really scary and really challenging, especially in an environment where, if a fundraiser feels like they say the wrong thing or something that might not be values aligned with a potential partner, that could have a really scary impact on the organization. And so when you talk about vulnerability, we talk about relationships, it's not just that like I know a person or we go to these meetings together every month or whatever, but I know who they are as a human outside of their paid work. I know the things that they care about. I know the things that keep them up at night. I know all of your cats. My children named your cats. Like, there are people outside of my, inner circle who have seen me sobbing my eyes out or, cursing at the heavens because it was real. I don't know that always fits the definition of professional, but I have learned that sort of practicing vulnerability, practicing honesty, it can come with growing pains. It can come with some hurt. It can come with some rejection. It can come with feelings of failure. But like on the whole, I think it creates space for more transformative work, more mutual growth. And that feels like a value add to me.
I want to touch on that. So I think what folks are usually used to might be that professional context. And that's shaped by hierarchy, urgency, burnout. How does that change for being vulnerable in that professional context?
Oh my goodness. Next time I'm going to ask you the hard question.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to answer as well. I will say for me, it's been so amazing to have this journey of learning, and I'm not done and I won't ever be done, but to have a safe space where I am able to learn and experience and not be penalized for making a mistake is everything. And growing with folks in my professional journey, not just, specifically work colleagues, but other colleagues in professional organizations, being able to reach out to them and say, oh, this is what I'm experiencing. Help me learn through it, is really what works best for me and what makes me feel happy and healthy in my work.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely hear that. I think in the work, in relationships and organizations, it can be hard to even give yourself the space to be vulnerable. I have a lot of colleagues and friends and people I care about that work in, what I would call like more traditional, like 9 to 5 institutions. They're like a W-2 employee, who feel like they have to be really careful in their workspace about, how they show up or what they share, or even admitting that like they might need help with something. And so for me, vulnerability generally starts with like talking it out, like putting the problem out there for like multiple perspectives, multiple like interrogation, and taking our time defining like what we are actually trying to solve for, instead of just believing that like one perspective or one opinion is the one that needs to be addressed. So that definitely feels like part of it for me. In regards to burnout, I will not speak for every, working parent, but it is difficult to balance wanting to be a good at your work and be a good present parent, and then also, maybe be a good friend and a good daughter and sister and family member and volunteer and neighbor, and so I have had to be really particular and specific about how I use my time. And that actually means like, I think part of vulnerability in like the professional context is being okay with saying no.
Yeah.
Like no is a full sentence. It doesn't mean I'm mad. It doesn't mean I hate you. It doesn't mean we're fighting. There's, I think a lot of people are like, oh my God, I can't believe she decided not to do that. Right. But I think that, and I think, sorry, I will say it's not just saying no, it is also being gracious in like receiving the no. Because there are times where I mean, this, I'll be like, here's my like wild idea. And there are times where you've totally been like, yeah, let's do it. And then there are other times where you've been like, yeah, absolutely not.
Cool. Let's put a pin in it. Or
right. Yeah. So I do think it looks like that. But I also feel like being honest about what I need when I'm doing my best work has also allowed me, and I think the Gladiator team, to provide our like best selves, our the best parts of what we know, to be able to meet the needs of the partners and organizations that choose us.
I completely agree, and I wish that everyone had the same experience that I have in their work. But what does it look like? What does an example of how vulnerability changed an outcome actually look like in the work?
I would say, and for the purposes of today, since we like didn't really ask for anyone's permission, I'm gonna like try to speak with a little anonymity.
Okay.
That might not always be true, but
Good plan.
Amy, I think of a organization who was a client of ours a couple of years ago, who reached out. They were, in the early phases of the work, and were sort of trying to organize their board. And so they came in with like very clear, like, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to teach. And as we like started having conversations and doing our engagement work, realized that like what our client believed was the problem or the issue that needed solving, and what that board was naming were actually two very different places. And so I do think, as a person who has also worked at nonprofits in the past, I've seen where some folks are like, well, they're saying that, but like, this is the scope and we're going to like do the scope. Yeah. And, one of the things that we had to, that I think we've practiced and have gotten good at, is saying like, hey, I know that you framed this for us, and I know you wanted to get that done in like 3 months. And actually, based on what we've heard, it actually seems like we maybe need to change our approach, add some months in, and make sure that it's not that the issue or the situation that we're tackling, that it's not just that you have like a consultant coming in to like fill a gap, but that you have the support to build capacity. So like this issue isn't an issue again, right? Because you know how to do it. You don't have to, in a year or 2 years or 5 years, like pay another group, right, to do the same work again.
Absolutely. I feel like as a consultant, we're always teaching our birds how to fly. We want them to leave the nest and fly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think about this all the time. Like, I know some nonprofits who are like, wouldn't it be nice for us to be so good at this work that we put ourselves out of business? And I've come to realize that, yes, that is very lovely. And also, I think for any of that to be true, we would just have to be in such collaboration with each other. Like, right. Yeah.
Big audacious goals, Rachel. Big audacious goals.
I know. I mean, and I think the other thing is like, I can also like point at very specific places where I have not been vulnerable or transparent in situations. And, yeah, like everybody.
Do you want to say more about those? Like, I think that's like actually a good example.
Yeah. I mean, there are some times where, I mean, and I'll sort of, for me right now, that also comes in to some of like the speaking engagements that I take on outside of, Missouri. But, yeah, I mean, there are some times where I feel a little self-conscious, especially given the current, it's just sort of fractured political climate and uncertainty of like, am I going to say something in this room that is going to make me the target of somebody's anger, violence, whatever. That is something I think about. And
you have to protect yourself and your
family. And you do. I do. That is accurate. And, I have sometimes, I think, self-censored at the expense of the other 50 people who could have benefited from hearing a more vulnerable and transparent perspective. So I think about that way. I also think about like this was probably a few years ago. There are also some, I think projects that I've worked on where, I'm like trying to maintain the balance of like what the scope of the work is, what you said you wanted, what we're being paid to do, like what the deliverables are, like balancing the whole timeline of all those activities. And yeah. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like we don't have time, or there's not like more, whatever in this contract. And so then at the end of it, I'm like doing the exit interview, and because we always do exit interviews, and the client's like, oh, like I thought about this in hindsight. And I'm like, oh, I sort of thought about that a few months ago and just felt like if I brought it up, it was just going to like throw a wrench in everything. And so I say all this to say, like, yes, Amy, to your point, we do need to be safe and careful. And also, I feel like when I don't speak up, when I'm not practicing vulnerability, that it has been like that. Not, I don't want to say it's caused harm, but like that it hasn't produced, I think, as good of outcomes.
Absolutely. And it all goes back to alignment with your values, your personal values, our organizational values, all of the above. And that's something that we practice personally, organizationally, and that we pass on to our clients. So talking about this, what does vulnerability actually look like for a nonprofit? So at an organizational level.
Yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about this lately. Amy and I just got back from AFP Icon in Seattle. We both serve on our local chapter's AFP board. And, you would have to stayed in your hotel room all day not to have heard about two, big sets of data. The information that's come out of the Fundraising Effectiveness Project and Neon One's Generosity report that just dropped. And when I read both of those things, you know, what I have taken from it is that yes, giving, like individual giving, has continued to drop, and our rate of asking has dropped. And so I can sense, you know, that probably at least nationally, maybe globally, nonprofits are really struggling to figure out how to communicate with donors, how to be in relationship with them, how to solicit them. And so rather than figuring it out, they maybe have taken their foot off the gas a little bit, or are trying to wait until things maybe shift or change, or there's more information. And the other thing, you know, so I'll put that there. I am going to answer your question. And then I think about, you know, the generosity report, which really focuses on the like 95% of donors who ultimately are really giving less than $5,000 a year, like spread across whatever organizations, right? So these are probably your annual, like smaller dollar donors, your recurring donors, who are saying like, y'all aren't asking us, like, or my credit card expired and you're not taking my recurring gift anymore, right? And so I think to the point of how can nonprofits practice vulnerability, I think it's twofold. I am always going to say it's like telling the truth. What do you know that you need to say out loud, even if it's scary, right? What is that? Even if your voice shakes. And then like, who do you need to be talking to, right? Like we have communities for a reason. It's not on one person or one organization's shoulders to like figure out the solution. So if no one else, I think I said this on LinkedIn at some point, like if no one else is calling the meeting, picking up the phone, sending the text, then like you are the one that you're looking for, right? Like, so call your donors and be like, hey, things are hard. How are you? How do you want to be a part of our organization's work in this moment, right? Call your funders and be like, hey, we're not due for a grant check-in for 6 months, but like, I got to talk to you now.
This
right?
sounds
like,
exactly like what we went through during COVID. You
know,
100%. Just a few years ago when the sky fell.
I know, but like we have, we have that kind of episodic amnesia, like that, you know, when like people that have babies, they're like, I'll have a baby again because I like don't remember it the first time, right? Like maybe we have some amnesia that we just don't think about that. Or, you know, I mean, and I actually think about this with COVID, like so many people just left the sector or changed jobs. So, so I think the answer to your question is tell the truth, even when it's hard, and have the conversations, like non-ask meetings. You don't have to get right out there, you know, that's fine, but like start the conversation, invest your time and your interests in the relationship. It is likely that there are people in your donor pool, in your prospect pool, in the community you serve with your volunteers who have information that will help you weather this moment. So like, use the resources, right? Like use what you have, what you've organized.
Lean into your community.
Right. Like build the next step. So I think I'll leave that there. Okay. So next week, I think you and I are talking more about fundraising, right? Are we?
I believe we are. We're going to get into some of the nitty gritty about what it's like to actually try to raise money in this
in a poly crisis. If you don't know the definition of polycrisis, you will learn it next week.
Okay.
And actually, thank you to our wonderful support staff, Sarah and Coco, who are reminding us that we will have a special guest next week. And we will actually be talking a little bit about the Ethical Nonprofit Summit that's happening next month. So if you want to hear this conversation with Gladiator and Deanna, you can join us next Friday at 2:30 Central. If there are things that you want to hear Gladiator talk about or not talk about, let's be honest, please feel free to email us at hello@gladiatorrds.com. We are also pretty active on Instagram and LinkedIn. So you can find us on Instagram at gladiator.consulting. And then you can just search us Gladiator RDS on LinkedIn. But we will be here next week and hope that you bring questions, stories, successes, existential screams, and like whatever beverage meets your moment. Again, today the beverage is water.
Cheers.
And all are welcome. So happy Friday, Amy.
Chin chin. Thanks, y'all. Bye.
Bye.